Good evening. Want to thank everybody for tuning in to another hangout right here on MyMindOnSports.com. This evening, as you guys all saw the title, previewing the draft. That is exactly what we're here to do. I'm joined this evening by Mr. Justin Higdon from DraftBrowns. Justin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. You know, we had you one time last year, and I was like, you know what, we got to do it again.
Definitely.
Owen. You know, this is Owen Reese, one of the newest members of the My Mind on Sports team. Well, I guess, I don't want to say new. You know, the newness is worn off. The guy's been putting in work since he's been here. So, Owen, this is your first time joining us for a hangout. So I want to thank you for joining us, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having
No problem, man. You're part of the team, man. You ain't got to say thank you. All right. So, the top of the draft. This draft has been crazy this year. We're talking to Justin before we got started about the draft taking place in May. It's added even more time for the crazy amounts of speculation and nonsense that usually pops up around the NFL draft, and it's almost to the point where it's beyond nauseum at the moment. But we're going to talk about the top part of this draft, just the first top 5 picks, because it's huge. You have some teams in prime positions and big time decisions to be made. So we're going to touch on the top part of the draft, the top 5, and then the bottom 5 of the first round. We're going to start off with Houston, St. Louis, Jacksonville, Cleveland, and Oakland. Justin, we're going to start with you with Houston. You know, you're the GM. You have the number 1 pick. Is this truly a really tough decision for you?
I think I have to give it some thought because, I think it is kind of a tough decision. The Texans need a quarterback. They bring in Bill O'Brien. He's a kind of quarterback guru type, known for his work about quarterbacks. There's been rumors since about December or so that he's a Blake Bortles guy, and I don't know if that's the case or if that's the fit people see. People see Bortles as his type of quarterback, but I think it is a tough choice, and maybe it shouldn't be because Jadeveon Clowney is such a good prospect. We were talking about him a little earlier. The guy's taken a lot of heat for work ethic and things like that. As the same people last year saying that he should have taken the year off so he wouldn't get hurt because he was a guaranteed number 1 pick. Well, now there's some doubt about it, and I think Clowney ultimately is the pick, and that the Texans will take him or trade out of that place to let someone else make the pick at number 1. But I think they really need to give a lot of thought to Johnny Manziel. And I know that's not a Bill O'Brien type of quarterback that people think, but Manziel is a Texas guy. He's a fiery, energetic leader. He's an extremely talented player in my mind and can make all the throws and makes exciting things happen. I think Houston's a team 2 years ago. They were really pretty good team, and it just kind of fell off a cliff last year. He could bring them back to the playoffs in 1 year. So I think it's a tough choice. Ultimately, I think Clowney goes in that spot. Maybe the Texans trade out of it, though.
All right. Owen, your thoughts on Houston with that number 1 overall pick?
I think it's got to be Clowney. Honestly, if it's going to be 2 people, it should be Clowney or Khalil Mack. I think that's definitely the quarterback position. They have big names this year, but overall there isn't a whole lot of top-end talent right now. It's not an Andrew Luck draft where you're going to get this guy and he's going to be a Pro Bowler in 3 to 4 years. So if it's me making the pick, it's got to be Clowney. Like I said, if there's other thought to be put into it, Khalil Mack, exceptional athlete coming off the edge. I watched his Ohio State film again today, and unblockable, picked off a bubble screen, just stuff like that, very instinctual. But I'm not a real big fan of any of the top 3 quarterbacks. Not that I don't like them, but that I don't necessarily know if they belong even in the top 5. Any of them. I have Teddy Bridgewater highest, but with all the talk of him sliding, I don't know. I think it's got to be Clowney. I think this is a once in a lifetime, or not once in a decade kind of talent that, and with the potential to pair him with J.J. Watt and Cushing, potentially all on one side of the field at the same time, I think that's too much.
Okay. So we started with you last time, Justin. We're going to start with you. So St. Louis has No, in my opinion, I think the greatest spot in the world. They get to just sit there and two, and after the Texans, belabor over that choice, they just get to go. Okay, well, whatever you guys didn't get, I'll take one of those. If it happens to be Clowney or whatever the pick may be, it's a luxury position. Whoever gets mad at someone for taking the number 2 overall pick, if you miss, we're all gonna remember if you missed the number 1 overall pick. All right, so St. Louis, what do you do if you're St. Louis? Who do you take, or do you trade down and get more picks?
Well, that's tough. It's got to be Watkins or maybe look at a Khalil Mack, but I think it's got to be Watkins or one of the offensive tackles. Sam Bradford, despite having all of his guaranteed money paid already, you made a huge investment into him. You made him the face of your franchise 5 years ago, and what you've got to do is you got to give him some help. At offensive tackle, you could either go Greg Robinson from Auburn or Jake Matthews. I'd like Matthews better out of those two, but I think they go with Sammy Watkins. I think ultimately in that division, you have to score points because the Cardinals, Niners, and Seahawks all have excellent defenses. So you got to find a way to score points, and Sammy Watkins is easily the best wide receiver prospect in this draft. And I think with him, along with Zach Stacy they got last year, developing, they have enough of a run game to help Bradford, but Watkins is the ultimate offensive weapon in this class at least, and I think that he should be the pick.
Okay. Justin, what say you if you had, you're on the clock for the St. Louis Rams with the number 2 overall pick?
I think Owen's onto something with the offensive tackles. St. Louis, they've already got 2 first-round picks. I don't know if they really need to trade back. I'm sure they're going to listen if someone's come calling. But I think offensive tackle is where they're ultimately going to end up going, and I think what I've been hearing is that Jeff Fisher is a fan and a friend of the Matthews family, and that would make me think that they would be leaning toward Jake Matthews over Greg Robinson with that pick. And Owen said something else too. With Bradford, they still have an investment there. They still have something they might want to see through, and the guy's just had a lot of injuries. You may want to try and protect him, and they haven't done that over the years. So this is a good opportunity for them to get some good protection in left tackle. Jake Matthews is a guy who's got great pedigree. I personally would prefer Greg Robinson just a little bit more due to the upside, but if you want a guy that's going to play right now and be a starting caliber left tackle, I think it's Jake Matthews that going there. It's a great place for a team that maybe wants one of the quarterbacks, or if Clowney drops to 2, to move up, or if someone wants Khalil Mack at 2, they can move up. But if St. Louis is staying put, and I don't see any reason why they would need to really add a whole lot of picks, and they might do it for a future pick, something like that. But if they're staying put, I think it is the left tackle, Matthews.
Okay. All right, Jess, I'm going to start with you again this time. You guys, wonderful answers for the first 2 picks. Moving on to Jacksonville, which, this offseason, they look like they're trying to change the culture down there. And, how are they going to continue to do so with that pick? Who's going to be their guy, Justin?
Jacksonville needs – we could say this about all these teams. Jacksonville needs a quarterback so bad. And they tried to do it a couple of years ago with Blaine Gabbert, and that just became a disaster. They re-signed Chad Henne. They might see him as a placeholder. They've got some former Seahawks guys kind of run the show. So maybe Gus Bradley wants to try and repeat magic and find a Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. I don't know who that guy would be. I can't. Maybe it's a guy like Aaron Murray that they see sitting there in the 3rd round. He drops a little bit with the knee issue. So I don't think Jacksonville's going to take a quarterback. They desperately need one. I think this is where we're going to see Khalil Mack go off the board. And I'm not I'm not as high on him as Owen is. If you could, I understand the Ohio State game was fantastic with Khalil Mack. He was kind of going back and forth between going up against Jack Mewhort on the left side and then he had a sophomore right tackle to go against, and he just schooled that kid repeatedly. So I'm not sure that on the flip side, there's the San Diego State game, the bowl game, where he was very, very quiet, and I don't think San Diego State has a single pro caliber offensive lineman there. So you can look at it from both sides. Khalil Mack is a fantastic athlete. He really has a lot of athletic potential. and I do believe he can be a very good player. I'm not sure he's a top 5 player in this draft, but this is where I think Jacksonville comes in, snags Khalil Mack. They've got the Leo position in their defense in mind with that pick, and I think that's going to be the guy.
All right. Owen, what say you with Jacksonville?
I'd have to agree with Justin. It's Khalil Mack. In that Leo position, Gus Bradley in Seattle had KJ Wright play it, and the guys like that. And they're bringing more Seattle guys over. They brought over Red Bryant and Clemens at the end, and all those guys, and they want to keep that defense up. In Jacksonville, like I said, we need a quarterback. As I said before, I don't think there's a quarterback that you can take in the top 5 of this draft. It's got to be Mack, just to build up the defense. They did a little bit last year. Kept them in games with the defense because clearly offense was an issue. But I think Mack is the only real way to go here. Like I said, if there was a quarterback, or if they do feel highly enough on one of the quarterbacks, they can definitely pull the trigger. But for Jacksonville, I definitely would be a lot happier with Khalil Mack and a second-round quarterback rather than a first-round quarterback and a second-round defensive prospect.
Okay. All right, we're on to Cleveland. So, Owen, I'm going to let you share your thoughts on Cleveland, and then Justin, I look forward to what you know to share your thoughts on Cleveland. As we shared earlier, this is what this guy does. So, Owen, for the Cleveland Browns, what do they do at 4? Did they finally go get that quarterback that they've so been searching for the last forever? So go ahead, Owen.
Yeah, they might be looking to find Bernie Kosar's replacement about 25 years later. I think this is a spot. Cleveland's in an interesting spot too because they have the 26th pick also. So if they don't feel comfortable enough with one of the quarterbacks, they could see whoever's left there, kind of a process of elimination. Who are we going to pick? I think at number 4, that's about the toughest spot in the top 5 to predict. If they do pick a quarterback, I think it's going to be Manziel. He's a playmaker. I don't know if he has quite strong enough arm to throw in the crappy Cleveland weather later in the year, but I think ultimately they've got to go. If Sammy Watkins is still there, they can pair him with Josh Gordon. If this is a mock and Sammy Watkins isn't there, I'd probably take Manziel. I don't know. They're in a tough spot. They keep looking for the quarterback, and year after year, we need a quarterback. We need a quarterback. I don't know if this year's the best quarterback class, but I think they go with Manziel. They sell the tickets. They need a quarterback in that division. Baltimore and Pittsburgh are falling off a little bit. Cincinnati is always tough, and they need a quarterback to get Josh Gordon the ball because I don't think Brian Hoyer or Vince Young or Tyler Thigpen or Alex Tanney are the guys to do the job. So Manziel's better than any of them. I think it's in a tough spot. Like I said, if they don't go quarterback at 4, they can always go at 26 too. But I think Manziel comes off the board at number 4.
All right, Mr. Higdon, your area of expertise, the Cleveland Browns. What do they do with the 4th pick, sir?
Well, for one, if they're going to wait on quarterback to 26, they better have 4 guys in mind, and they better have a pretty equal grade on all 4 of them because if they like one of them better, then I think they need to rethink that strategy. That's the kind of strategy that gets you in trouble. I think that's kind of what they did a couple years ago, and they ended up with Brandon Weeden, and that was a huge setback, huge mistake. As far as what they do at 4, I think they do. I've gone back and forth about this so many times. I've thought originally I thought it was going to be Greg Robinson. That I thought was the read that I was getting from Ray Farmer. Then I heard through the grapevine that they were interested in Mike Evans. And if they are going to go receiver, I think Evans is a guy they hold in higher regard than Watkins because they feel that Josh Gordon and Watkins are kind of similar players in their offense, and that they would prefer another big guy who can go up and get the ball, kind of like their version of Alshon Jeffrey was for the Bears last year. So if they are going to go receiver, and in fact, the one mock draft that I did do, I had them taking Mike Evans with the 4th overall pick. But now I've gone full circle to where I was probably early in the fall, where I thought they were for sure going to take a quarterback, and I think they are, and I think this is where I think they do take Johnny Manziel here, and for some of the reasons that Owen said, it's going to bring some excitement to the team. He's going to they sell their games out, but the fans don't really show up toward the end of the season, so he's going to get some people showing up. I do agree that he's better than any quarterback that they have on the roster. I don't worry about his arm strength. The guy makes throws to all levels of the field, and he's a really excellent back shoulder passer, which is something that it would be big time with weapons like Gordon and Cameron, big, tall guys that can go get the ball. I love that about Manziel. He gives them some mobility. They've had some offensive line issues over the years. I think they are high on some young offensive linemen in their second years that are already on the roster, and Reed Fragel and Chris Falk, and that might stave off some sense of urgency to upgrade offensive line. So with already having, if you're drafting a receiver here, you're drafting your third option in the offense. If you're drafting offensive line, you're not necessarily high on these second-year guys that are developing and have been with the team for a year. Quarterback is something they've needed for 15 years since they came back into the league, and they're always ending up with the third or fourth best guy. In this scenario, we're talking about them having the shot at the first quarterback off the board. To me, Manziel's the best quarterback in the class. That's got to be the pick here.
Okay, so we're almost done with the top 5. That brings us to Oakland. Like Jacksonville, well, not Cleveland, but like Jacksonville, they've been trying to change that culture over there as well. A lot of big, big name free agent signings through the free agent period. But what do? They had Terrell Pryor last year, and I think a lot of folks thought Pryor made some strides. Didn't think, it was the worst thing in the world for them. But they got a top 5 pick in this year's draft. What are they doing with it, Justin?
Oakland is a tough call for me because they could do a lot of different. They could go a lot of different directions here, and they really I think they threw everyone for a loop last year when right before the draft, I forget which one of the big reporters came out and said that they were targeting cornerback DJ Higdon with that third overall pick that they held last year. Now they ended up trading back with Miami and getting Higdon with the 12th pick. And not too many people even thought Higdon would go in the first round because he was coming off a really freakish injury too. So Oakland really is a wild card. I think there are guys playing for their jobs, coaching for their jobs there. They traded for Matt Schaub, so I don't think quarterback's the pick. They could go Sammy Watkins there. And it seems like Watkins has fallen a little bit in our scenarios here tonight. But the interesting name that I've heard them linked to, and that could be their surprise pick this year because they might do it to us again, would be Aaron Donald, the defensive tackle from Pitt. This guy really dominated at the Senior Bowl, and I think really caused people that maybe thought he was a little bit too short, too small for a defensive tackle to rethink their position on that. He just dominated every guy he lined up against that week. You go back and look at his game tape, he's kind of doing the same thing. He's just a really great interior pass rusher. He's drawing comparisons to Geno Atkins. I'm not sure he's quite that on that level, but Geno Atkins dropped when he was drafted, so he's the guy who made Donald going in the top 5 even possible. And Donald has superior athleticism. The guy runs like a 4.7 40 at 280 pounds, 290 pounds. So I think Oakland's the surprise here. Maybe they trade out of this spot if somebody wants to come grab one of those other quarterbacks. But I like Aaron Donald with this pick.
Okay. Owen, Oakland, 5th overall pick. What are they doing?
Oakland. Oh, I just like to start. Reggie McKenzie gets the GM of the offseason award so far. Right after the Roger Saffold debacle, he's gotten a lot of these big name free agents and pretty cheap prove it contracts. And with the Schaub trade, they get the quarterback that at least will hold the place until something else better comes along. Also, we're talking, they're not in the best spot here. I think they still, I think eventually they trade back. They are still kind of pick robbed from a couple years ago when their first pick was like 97. So I think overall they trade back, get more picks. In a draft this deep, they can get a lot of starters, a lot of key contributors later in the draft. I think at number 5 they go Mike Evans if they stay, and if he's still there. They need They need a wide receiver. I think their starting wide receivers are Rod Streeter and Denarius Moore. They need a wideout. Someone like Evans, it could be the wide receiver they didn't take when they could have had Calvin Johnson. Schaub's going to need a weapon or a go-to guy like he had in Houston with Andre Johnson. I think Evans fills that need for now. They've done quite a bit on the offense with free agents, with Jones-Drew and guys like that. But I think they really, really want to get out of this spot. Although if they do stay, it's either Mike Evans. And really, in Oakland, you never know what they're going to do. They've shown that before. So I don't know. I think eventually they trade back, but I think Evans is the pick if they're there.
Okay. See, look, you guys took care of some pretty tough picks with the first 5. Since you guys did such a great job, gonna challenge you guys a little bit here. So that was the top part of the first round, the first 5 picks. Gonna take a trip all the way down to the bottom because at the top we already know those were the teams who didn't do so well last year. Now gonna look at the team, that I guess it's safe to say, the contenders. At least not only for last year, but some of the teams that, we've grown accustomed to seeing. Late in the season, playing, late in the January and whatnot. So we're gonna start here. Carolina, just they finally started going in the right direction, and everything. And then this off season has been interesting to say the least. I think interesting is a kind word. I have several Carolina fans that are friends, and man, the words that they use to describe this off season, once again, I'm not gonna share. This evening, as long as this this little light's on. But Carolina picking, now since they've had, coming off some success, you win your division, you go in, you win your division, you get to the playoffs. Unfortunately, you lose to the Niners, but you're here, you're around. What do they do with their first pick in the 2014 draft, which happens to be, the first of the bottom 5 of the first round? We're going to start with you, Owen.
Okay. Well, they have no wide receivers anymore. So I know they brought in Jericho Cotchery and a couple other guys. I think Marquise Lee could be a good pick for them. He's kind of fallen into the talk about, he could be the wide receiver that drops a little bit. Or Cody Latimer from Indiana, too, has been the hot guy who's been coming up lately. I think that they have to go wide receiver. They've hit big in their last 2 first-round picks with Kuechly and Starlo Tulele on the defensive side. Now they need to go give Cam some help, as it was pretty evident in the San Francisco game that Cam was shouldering quite a bit of the load. They got Greg Olsen at tight end. He's pretty good, but they don't have much help at wide receiver for him. I think that's the direction they have to go. With those 2 first-round picks, they bumped them up from – they had Cam, and they got Kuechly and Lotulele from the first pick in the draft up to the – fighting hard for that NFC crown, but this next pick I think will be the biggest one. If they can get over that hump and get someone to really drive that offense to help the defense, which will hold people under 20 points, if they can just score a little bit, they can be really dangerous. I think Marquise Lee's the pick.
Okay, Justin, the Carolina Panthers. What side of the ball do they address with their first round pick in 2014? New territory. They're picking at the bottom of the first round.
Yeah, Carolina could use some help along that offensive line too. But I think whether they're going offensive line or receiver here, I think they might want to think about trading up. If they're going to get a receiver like Latimer, who like Owen said, is a hot name right now, I could see some teams trying to leapfrog in front of Carolina to try and get one of these receivers. So does Carolina target a guy? Maybe if some of these guys that they want are already off the board, do they then go target a guy like Brandon Cooks from Oregon State? He's a smaller guy. Some people have compared him to Steve Smith. I don't get that comparison. He's not the same type of receiver as Steve Smith. To me, he's more like a little bit bigger of Tavon Austin. coming out last year, which is kind of strange because I wonder if Cooks would have been a top 10 pick last year. I'm not sure. But anyway, if Carolina wants to trade for, or if they want an offensive lineman, are they going to end up with, are they going to have to pick from guys like Morgan Moses from Virginia or Joel Bitonio from Nevada? Are those guys even going to be there? They're in an interesting spot because they do need help at these key positions. I think receiver is going to be the pick, but I could see them trying to move up. I know some people want them to take Odell Beckham, and they would definitely have to trade up for him. If they sit tight, Marquise Lee is a good name. I think that's a good area for him. Cooks is the other one. I have a feeling Latimer is going to go off the board before Carolina's got a chance to pick him. And then maybe they surprise us and take a guy who's just one of these tall speed freaks like Martavis Bryant from Clemson. That would be the big shocker, I think, a surprise first-round pick. But I'm going to go, prediction-wise, I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks, the receiver from Oregon State. I think that's the pick at 28. He's a smaller guy, but he's got a ton of speed. Get him in open space and maybe on some kick returns, maybe do some damage.
Okay. All right. You guys did a great job with Carolina. Now for New England. Tom Brady's not going to play forever. Eventually, New England's going to want to go out with a bang and not waste his last, few years in a very, very, very good NFL career. So, Justin, if you're the New England Patriots, what do? You stand pat where you're picking? We know the Patriots are notorious for trading back and getting, accumulating more picks. But is this the year that you do the opposite and you're aggressive and you go up to go get a player, or does Bill do what Bill normally does and go backwards?
Yeah, I think they go backwards. I think Bill would be Bill this year, and this is the perfect year to do it because it's such a deep draft. We keep hearing this over and over again, and when you get into the bottom part of the first round, if you can, there's guys he could be targeting at that spot where he can move back and still end up with those guys. If he stays there, I think they're going to be looking at defensive line. And one of the names that they've been linked to is Dominic Easley from Florida. And this is a player who's torn ACLs in both his knees. He's torn cartilage. He's a guy who I know that I wouldn't even draft because I just don't see a player like that having a long career. He's also a player that if they want him, I think they can move back out of the first round and still get him. I don't see a lot of teams going to make that gamble in the first round of this draft. So I think New England's going to trade out and go back into maybe in the middle, late second round, accumulate picks, accumulate a future first rounder, and maybe take Easley there in the second round where they can afford to. They're a team that probably feels they can afford to take that type of gamble. Their front office loves him, thinks that they might be a team that could redshirt him or put him on the PUP list, let him sit out a few weeks, and see if those knees get healthy. It's not a gamble I would take, but I think that's kind of the direction they'd want to go in.
Okay. Owen, the New England Patriots, what are they doing at the bottom of the first round? If they pick, as Justin highlighted, they might do the Patriot way. Trade back.
The Patriot way. I think they got to go defense when you play in the same. Eventually, all roads lead through Denver, and with Peyton Manning the way, having the weapons he has, and the record-setting year he had last year, you got to stop him. I think there's a couple ways they could go. There's a couple guys who are going to drop that I think could be available around there, and that's kind of the Patriot way. Two is great value on everything. I think two guys I really look at. One is the defensive tackle from Minnesota, Rashid Hageman. He's very scheme versatile. He's 6'6" and 320 pounds, pretty good athlete. His biggest knock is his motor, and you've seen the Patriots take chances on guys like that. Albert Haynesworth. You don't know if they're going to show up every play. Talent's not the issue. And the way they run their hybrid kind of defense, he can fit as a nose, a 5-tech, or even as a 3-tech in the 40 front. Another guy who's been dropping is Darqueze Dennard, the corner from Michigan State. And they also, when you have to cover guys like Demaryius Thomas and offenses like that in Denver and San Diego and all these guys who score a lot of points, you always need cover guys. You can never have too many good corners in the NFL. And I think one of those two ways they got to address the defense. Two guys that they probably have valued very highly talent-wise, who are kind of falling. I think those are the best bets. Probably Hageman.
Okay. So we're going, you guys, that was New England. Now we're going to, the last three teams that are around. Well, the last three of the last four teams. That was New England. Moving to San Francisco. I can't talk about this, so it's on you guys because I'm obviously biased when it comes to that one. So I remove myself from this pick as I have every other one. But Owen, the Niners, do they stand pat, trade up out of last year? They went up and got Eric Reed, which not too many people were, not too many people predicted beforehand. Or what do they do? Go ahead, Owen.
I think they end up taking Kelvin Benjamin here. He's another guy. He's got some speed concerns, and people are worried about his weight. He's over 240 pounds. With the way they go up top, with the way they run the ball and run play action, they can go up top, and he's the perfect guy to do it. He's a fast guy, and guys like that where they need some development. John Harbaugh loves those guys. I think Benjamin falls. He's still there. He's a physical freak, but there's a lot of unknowns, and I think he falls to 30. San Francisco for a few years now and continues to be, and you kind of have a luxury of taking chances on people. They drafted A.J. Jenkins in the end of the first round a couple years ago and didn't really work out, and usually when a team's first-round pick doesn't work, they struggle, but the Niners are good enough that they can kind of take chances like that, and I think that, especially with the way that Jonathan Baldwin, who they got when they traded Jenkins, hasn't done much either, I definitely think that they can take a chance on a guy, go for another difference maker. Anquan Bolden's not getting any younger. And I think if they go Kelvin Benjamin, it's just another guy that San Fran seems to have quite a few of them who you can just say, yeah, you're going to walk off the bus first and look real good doing it. So I think Benjamin's probably the pick around 30, although they also could look at the O-line or some other spots.
Okay, Justin, San Francisco 49ers, what do they address?
Well, last year they traded up to get Eric Reed. Could they trade up again for another LSU guy and target Odell Beckham? They've got picks to spare. They can trade up. They've got flexibility. That's something Harbaugh is to get him. Harbaugh and Trent Baalke try and get him in that situation every year. So I think where I thought New England was is almost for sure going to trade out. I expect San Francisco to be a team that trades up. I don't think when 30 comes around that it'll be San Francisco's pick anymore. I think they're going to move up, get one of these receivers. If they're concerned about Kelvin Benjamin, who I think doesn't really play as well as he could on every snap, they could trade up and target a guy like Cody Latimer, and I think that'd be a great pick. Latimer's a weight room warrior. He runs a 4.4, 6'2.5", 6'3", 215. He's a rock. He looks like a linebacker. And he can play like one, too. He gets separation. He's got an extra gear to get open deep. I really like him. He was somebody that people got wise to late because he's an underclassman. I think a lot of people were a little surprised that he came out. And he played football at Indiana, which is not a hotbed for college football. So I don't think a lot of people are, when they're given a choice of a number of games, unless you've got 4 or 5 TVs running at once, I don't think you've got a lot of IU football on. So this is somebody that they caught up to. He also was injured and couldn't work out at the combine, but he got healthy enough to run that 4.40 at his size. It's remarkable. I would like to see San Francisco trade up, get Cody Latimer. That's a really good fit.
All right, before we move on to Denver, I just want to tell both of you, I'm not going to be upset if either one of what you guys just shared happens. I'm going to be ecstatic either way. Both of them, Kelvin, I've been he's on my draft crush list, and Cody Latimer too. So thank you guys both. If it doesn't happen, I'm looking for you both. I'm just playing. All right, moving on to Denver. All right, Justin, looking at Denver, they had a heck of a season. Got to the Super Bowl and got smashed, but it was a heck of a season. They've been busy spending some money. We were talking, I brought up New England not wanting to waste times last few years. Well, Denver's been beyond proactive and making sure they don't waste Peyton's last couple years with the way that they've been spending money on the defensive side of the ball. What does Denver do? Do you think they stand pat here, or are they going to continue this whole off-season mantra of being extra aggressive?
I think they should
move on to the draft. Sorry.
Yeah, I think they should continue to be extra aggressive here because some of the guys that they're going to need help at linebacker, they're going to need help at defensive back. And if they're going to sit at 31, some of these guys that they might be targeting are going to be off the board. Someone like a Kyle Fuller would be a fantastic help for them. They might have to go up too far to get him, so he might not be in the cards. Another player that they could target, and that might kind of fall to him, is Bradley Roby from Ohio State. He's a cornerback, super talented, had a fantastic redshirt sophomore year. His trouble started in the offseason. We got into a scuffle with a bouncer, had some legal drama. Charges were dismissed ultimately. He had a one-game suspension. And they spent the entire year kind of gambling, trying to play catch-up, make up for all of that one play at a time. And it didn't work out for him. He didn't have a great year. He's still really, really talented player. He just had some more legal drama, which is kind of what I thought was some trumped-up charges where he was charged with an OVI, had a citation issued for blood alcohol content that was .008, which is well below the legal limit. Roby's a guy who could fall to them. If they want to make a move, be aggressive. One of Roby's teammates, linebacker Ryan Shazier, that's a guy I think they will have to move up for. And they should look to get in front of Green Bay for that one. If Shazier would be a good fit in that defense playing, he can play inside, outside. He's a player who in college teams would line up and they would save a guard for him. I watched Iowa. The way Iowa took on Shazier was to put a guard on him on almost every play. NFL teams are not going to be able to do that, which means Shazier is going to be free to run and hit, and he does those things very well. He needs a lot of work in coverage, but if you don't need him to cover and he can just attack the run, come in the blitz from the middle, from the outside, he's a really good player, but I think they got to move up for him. I think they should continue to try and be aggressive. Peyton Manning's only got a year or two left.
All right. So that's Justin's take on Denver. How about you, Owen? What did John Elway and company do?
I was going to say the same thing. Peyton Manning, he doesn't have much time left. They're going all in. They got Talib and T.J. Ward and had a real successful offseason so far, and I think they continue that. I was going to say Ryan Shazier or C.J. Mosley from Alabama is another kind of run-and-hit linebacker that they like. They're on the 40 front. The D-line they've addressed a couple times in the last couple of years. They go there. I think another guy that we expect or we wouldn't expect to be here late is, and there's getting some buzz, is Dalen Buchanan. He's another guy from Washington State who could pop up in that late first round. And he is a truck, plays safety. And I think he's another guy who can be a difference maker as a rookie, which is what they'll be looking for. They're not going to be looking for an offensive lineman or something. They're going to be looking for a big flash name to go and help Peyton. They just lost Eric Decker in this offseason, so I wouldn't be overtly surprised if they were to trade up and maybe try and get Cody Latimer or someone like that, go get a talented prospect to keep on the offense. Ultimately, it wasn't the defense that lost them the Super Bowl, so they've got some work to do there, and they're just going to keep restocking the cupboards and give Peyton some more to work with.
All right, now last but not least, the reigning Super Bowl champions, a team that drafts extremely well. I think we all expect that to continue. But what is Seattle going to do in the first round, Owen?
I think they're going to go with Joel Bitonio from Nevada. He's the college left tackle, but he's only about 6'4", 310 pounds. He might be a little too short for what some teams want to tackle. He can play right tackle. He can play any of the guard spots. He can play center. He's tenacious as an offensive lineman. Watched his Florida State film and plays to and through the whistle constantly. Like I said, very versatile. And Seattle, despite their masses of talent everywhere on their roster, they don't have a very good offensive line, which is one of the reasons that Wilson has to use his escapability so often. They could really use some work at both of the guard spots, and Seattle really will do some odd things in the first round. They took Bruce Irvin a couple years ago, and they took James Carpenter, I think 4 years ago, who was a real reach and didn't work out at guard. So I think they could address the offensive line again, or they could make a splash pick and get a late wide receiver, someone who falls if Cooks falls, or if Lee continues to fall as he has throughout the process. So I think ultimately they go offensive line, but Seattle's going to do what they want, and it works. So I'd trust them.
Right. I think, after winning the Super Bowl, I don't think there's too much room for just for anybody to say anything. Go ahead, Justin. If you're Seattle, Pete Carroll and company on the clock, last pick in the first round, what are you doing with it?
I think Bitonio is a good call. That's a guy I've kind of had them pegged to take with that pick for a while now. He's one of the most athletic offensive linemen. He's got some three-cone and short shuttle times that rival some of the wide receivers that are better than a lot of the tight ends. He can move. He can play every position along the line. Teams have mostly been working him out at guard and center, so I expect him to end up on the inside at the pro level. But he is a nasty SOB. The guy will just fight in a good way through every play. Nobody's going to beat this guy, and if they do, he's going to come back and try and beat them again. He's not going to back down from anybody. A guy like that's made for the NFL game because he's going to come into the league with no fear. And I think Bitonio is a great player. He could go higher. He's the guy who could go a few picks higher. New England's a place that I think could target a guy like that because he's so versatile to play all these different positions. And he could end up going even higher than any of us are even thinking right now. But I like that pick. It's a good fit. Seattle's in a great spot because, they're right there at the border where they can trade back into that second round if there's a guy that they think they can still get a few picks later. So a hungry team might want to move up to 32. Seattle might see a guy that can still get a few picks later and make a move. If they're going to go receiver, this is where it could get real interesting because we're talking about a lot of guys already being off the board. So could they make a guy like Allen Robinson a surprise first-round pick? He's a really athletic yard after the catch guy from Penn State. He's got he's got great size, great leaping ability. He's got decent speed, at least in a short area. He's not going to be a guy who's going to run long and beat you deep, but he's going to be a guy who builds up speed quickly and then can run after the catch and beat guys up. I think Jordan Matthews is another big receiver they could target with that last pick if they stay put.
All right. So that's you guys are doing great. I mean, that's 2 segments, 20 minutes each. You guys are knocking this out the park. All right. The last 2 questions I have for you, we're going to talk wide receiver and defensive backs because, those two go together, obviously. With the wide receivers, I'm going to ask you each to give me your 4 favorite wideouts in this draft. Start with you, Justin.
Well, my top wideout is going to be Mike Evans from Texas A&M, and that's because I'm going to gravitate towards some of these bigger wideouts. I like what teams have been able to do with these big, giant wideouts that can make that back shoulder throw. Green Bay's a team that always seems stocked with big wide receivers, big, strong receivers. You saw Denver really have a lot of success with big, strong receivers. Cleveland we talked about with Gordon and Jordan Cameron, two big guys. The Bears with Marshall and Jeffrey. So I like Mike Evans because I think he's the closest thing. He's not Calvin Johnson, but he's the closest thing to that in this draft. And if you look at the receiving yardage leaders in the NFL and receiving touchdown leaders. And the vast majority of these guys are big receivers, 6'2" and over, 200 pounds and up. This is why I prefer Evans to Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins, really good player, but he'd be my number 2 receiver. He's a little bit smaller. He plays bigger than a guy who's 6 foot. And I think he's 210 pounds. He's got really big hands, and he can really go up and get the ball, fight for the ball. I like Watkins a lot. I just like Evans a little bit better. So I'll put Watkins number 2. Number 3, I like Odell Beckham Jr. He's a guy who, again, plays bigger than his listed height. He's 5'10", 5'11", in that range, and he's about 200 pounds. He's also adds some flavor to the return game. And one of the things that really sticks out to me with Odell Beckham is his quarterback really hung him out to dry a lot of times last year, where he had to go out, make a leaping catch, exposing his rib cage, taking a huge hit, hearing footsteps, and that guy Beckham was making those catches, and just got a couple really strong set of hands. He can really run. I like him a lot. And then my fourth receiver is Latimer, and I talked about him a lot earlier, so I won't rehash. But big, strong kid, fast, and I wish he could have done a full workout. I wish he was healthy enough to do that. But just take one look at this guy, and you won't have any doubts about how strong he is, or just how big he is. He's a huge kid.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm sure everyone, if you haven't seen, there's a great video floating around out there on YouTube of Mr. Latimer in a dunk contest, and he's a very athletic kid at that size as well. The video was very impressive. I watched it a couple of times. All right, Owen, your top 4 wide receivers in the 2014 NFL Draft.
I think my top 4, I have Watkins a little higher than Justin does. I just think he's an electric kind of playmaker. He's also a guy in the return game, can make a difference, does well on the jailbreak screens that Denver made so popular this year with Demaryius Thomas. He can add that. He's got deep speed. He runs a 4.4. I just think he's probably the best overall wide receiver in this group. Number 2 is Mike Evans from A&M. Evans is a freak. He went out for the basketball team, and they said, hey, we might know something that you can do a little better. He's 6'5", he's 225 pounds. The only knock on Evans is he doesn't have great deep speed to separate. He uses his body like the power forward kind of thing. He'll go up, and Manziel would throw him a lot of jump balls. The back shoulder fades. So he can use his body to his benefit. And I think he's an excellent receiver. I just think he's got a little bit of some Musa Muhammad in him. He's a big receiver, but he just can't separate like some of the smaller, faster guys. But I still do think he's an excellent receiver. Number 3, I have Beckham as well from LSU. He's tough. He reminds me of a little smaller version of Anquan Bolden. Rarely does he get hit and stay down. He bounces up right away from a hit. Had some quarterback issues at LSU with Mettenberger. But the versatility in the return game, runs good routes. I like Beckham a little less than Justin, but not quite. He's still my number 3. And then number 4, I have Kelvin Benjamin. He's a freak. He's a big guy. A lot of people have him fallen. Like I said, he's got a lot of Mike Evans in him, where he's just big and he can out-muscle you and out-physical you. He's a little bit faster than Evans. He came out. He's an older kid. He's a redshirt sophomore, but he's 22 years old already. He can do some things with that size, like we said, with Marshall and Jeffrey in Chicago and Calvin in Detroit and guys like that. These big receivers that you can't cover. They're always open because they're that big, and I think that Benjamin provides a lot of that. I think he has some refinement still to go in his game, but I definitely think he's one of the kids that he's a potential bust, and he'll fall, but I think ultimately he's going to end up one of the better receivers in this draft.
Okay, and that's crazy. I'm sure that wasn't fair to you guys to ask you guys to pick just 4 wide receivers, and what's been billed is one of the deepest wide receiver classes ever. So sorry about the question. It wasn't fair, but you guys, once again, did a great job with it. Ask you about the wideouts. Got to ask you about the defensive backs. So Owen, I need 4 of your favorite defensive backs in, yet again, your class.
Oh, boy. Well, my number 1, I like Justin Gilbert. He's a freak athlete, cover corner potential. Reminds me a little bit of Joe Higdon that Justin knows pretty well about. Excellent. He can lock down the corner. Some of the best hip fluidity I've seen in a corner in quite a while. Ran a 4.34, I think, at the combine, so there's no issue there. Bigger guy, and I think that he's someone who's really going to make a difference. Number 2 is I have Calvin Pryor ahead of Clinton Dix. Pryor is a difference maker at safety. He likes to come up and clean up piles. He's a little underrated in coverage. Some of the best instincts I've seen in this class from the secondary, and plays physical. He's pretty versatile. He played corner a little bit this year as well as some safety, and he can play either safety spot. So I like him. Dennard at number 3, big physical corner from Michigan State. His falling could be deep speed concerns, and he struggled in the off man at the Senior Bowl, so that could be hurting him a little bit, but I think he's still a good corner. And then at number 4, I really like Odell Buchanan. Like I said, we talked about it earlier, so I'm not going to talk too much, but he's a truck that plays safety. He hits people, and which may get him in trouble in the NFL, some Bernard Pollard penalties. But I think he's a very good kid. He didn't get a whole lot of exposure at Washington State, as they haven't been what they used to be, but I think he's going to be a kid who, kind of like that Eric Reed, someone's going to trade up late to get him when he might not be quite thought of that high, but I think Odell Buchanan's a very good football player.
All right. So Owen shared his. Justin, your 4 favorite DBs in the 2014 draft.
My top DB, my top corner is Kyle Fuller from Virginia Tech, and he's actually the guy in this class who reminds me of Joe Higdon. The way he plays the ball, the way he breaks up passes, he really really a master at getting that one hand kind of behind the receiver and using the other hand to reach across in front and swat the ball away. Really fantastic job doing that. Fuller is a really versatile player too. They line him up all over the place in that defense at Virginia Tech. Sometimes he's lined up at linebacker. He's not afraid to hit. He's a good tackler. He's a fast, athletic leaper. Fuller's my favorite defensive back in the entire class. Second guy, I'm still very high on Bradley Roby. I know it's probably not real popular, but I really believe in him as a player, and I think Ohio State's defensive coaching leaves a lot to be desired. And he's too talented of a player. He probably already had a foot out the door to the NFL and probably regretted maybe not going into the draft last year where he could have been a top 20, 25 pick. I still have very high hopes for Roby, and talked about him earlier why. Third, I have Jimmy Ward, who's a versatile safety from Northern Illinois. He's a smaller guy, but he's my favorite safety in the draft. He can cover. Really stood out at the Senior Bowl. He can play free safety, strong safety. He can line up and play slot cornerback. I think his role is going to be a free safety. He's got really good ball skills. He makes a lot of interceptions, makes a lot of plays in that defense, and that defense was pretty atrocious otherwise. So Ward's my guy there. And then fourth, I've got Gilbert, who Owen talked about. And he's a big, tall corner. He kind of plays like a receiver, except he doesn't have good hands. And part of that's because his hands are so small. But that's why defensive backs are defensive backs and receivers are receivers. So I like Gilbert. But I want to cheat and add one more guy because this is a player that I don't think a lot of people know about. But my next best guy is Philip Gaines, a cornerback from Riese. I love this guy. He's so talented and such a good defender, and teams actively avoided him this season at Riese. And you can see why, because when they do throw it to him, it's almost an automatic pass breakup. So I really love Philip Gaines, and I just wanted to squeeze a fifth one in there so I could mention him.
No problem. Just to keep things fair, you got a chance to squeeze a fifth. Owen, you have a chance to squeeze a fifth to your defensive back list.
I like Keith McGill from Utah. He reminds me a lot of Sean Smith, the other Utah corner from a few years ago, who's on the Chiefs now. He's 6'3", he's 215. He can play corner. He could play some safety. I think he'll be a corner because he ran a 4.48, I believe, the other day. So he's got the speed. That's not a concern. Very physical guy, and in the NFL being the copycat league it is, big corners are all the rage now. So if you got a 6'3" guy, you can go throw out on an island. That's your best bet. And I really like to watch him play. It's just fun to watch him play. But he's a guy, maybe the second round, but I think he's being a little undervalued. I like him a lot, and I think he'd probably be my fifth favorite. But he's just fun to watch play.
All right. I want to thank you both. I hope you guys enjoyed this. You know, we said it was going to be about an hour, and we did great on time. Got 6 minutes left on the clock. We want to thank you guys. The draft is Thursday. Justin, you told me what you have going on this week as far as the Browns go. You tell everybody where they can tune in and check that out.
Yeah, I'm going to be hosting the Dog Pound Central co-hosting the Dog Pound Central podcast with Mike Hogue Jr. on Thursday night. It should be around, I believe that's going to be around 10 p.m. Eastern time that night. So we'll have some plenty of picks in by that time. And I'm not sure if we usually tape it, but we might try and do a live show this week just because get some instant reaction. I'm also writing over at DraftBrowns.com, and I should have my big board up and probably a final mock draft here this week, so check that out too. Thanks for having me on the show tonight. It's great.
Oh, man, no problem. You are always welcome. And you guys, follow Owen. He's in just a short time has become, he's fit right in and, brought his lunch pail with him. He's been working hard this whole time. So we're going to have more draft stuff as this week goes on, so you guys already know where to follow us at. Keep up with us. Any draft questions you have, you can hit Owen directly on Twitter, or you can just forward them to My Mind on Sports, and I'll make sure Owen sees them. We're going to try to do some fun stuff, but definitely give Justin a follow on Twitter. Both of you guys share your Twitter handles. Justin?
I'm on Twitter at AFC, the number 2 NFC.
And Owen?
I'm on Twitter at Riese Draft, Riese Draft.
All right. Thank you guys all for tuning in. We're going to be playing more of these, and we look forward to the draft after what feels like a whole year. It's finally here. April was depressing for me. I'm finally, coming out of the doldrums. The draft is here. It's like better than Christmas to me, and, the NFL messed this up for me this year. I had to wait extra long for my present. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time.